Isaac Hernandez.
And I'm Holly McClure.
And this is Faith on Film, a program designed to keep you aware and informed on everything that's happening in the world of faith and family entertainment. Holly, I am so honored at our guest that we have today.
I am too, because he's like a brother, really. He's a friend for a long time, isn't he? We both have known him for a long time and seen what he's done. It's been so amazing and incredible over the years.
I know. I've known him for, oh my goodness, over 40 years. We've had a very similar career path. Our journeys have been very similar because we both put in a lot of years over at TBN. But you know what? But Paul, of course.
Hold on.
Yes. Yes.
I was both of your bosses at one time.
That's right.
That is true. That is true. Of course, you were definitely superseded by your mom. Yeah. Okay, we won't go there, will we? So anyway, now that you all know who we're talking about, PJ, as we know him, I know as Paul Crouch Jr., but we've always known him as PJ, was a producer on Trump 2024, The World After Trump, The Message, A Cowgirl Story. All these are films, The Omega Code, and of course, countless numbers of TV shows. Paul Jr. or PJ, welcome to Faith on Film.
Thank you, guys. It's an honor to be here. And, we're both, all three of us are aging, but I think we still look pretty good.
I think we still do. We've got a lot of history. And you were my boss without anybody being over you, so there you go.
Yeah, it's all the makeup. Right. It's all the makeup.
No, right. but Paul, I'm so impressed. There's been a lot of things going on that you have done, not just since TBN, that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. That's like, what's Paul doing these days? You're a very busy man, aren't you?
Yeah, the thing I learned after leaving TBN was, when God closes one door, multiple doors always open. And that's kind of the lesson I learned, leaving what I thought was going to be, the job for the rest of my life, to kind of help manage TBN, help take over TBN as my parents aged out. But my brother had other ideas. And, when I left, I really, I'm 52 years old or whatever. And I'm like, I've got to go get a job. But what was amazing was just all of a sudden, miraculously, doors opened here, doors opened there, different networks, prophets came around me and gave me some amazing, words at that time. I'm not a big prophet person, but some of these guys were unbelievably accurate. And so I was honored, and now I'm working with, dozens of amazing ministries. I've worked with almost every Christian network out there, including Daystar and TCT and CTN and Victory Channel and his channel. And, it was interesting. One of the few prophecies that I remember was Paul, he said, when you leave TBN, you're going to be like a bumblebee. And he said, I see this huge field of flowers. And he said, the flowers, many of them are closed and they're not blooming that well. But I see you as a bumblebee going from flower to flower to flower to flower, pollinating these different networks. And these networks all of a sudden started to explode with color, and they started to grow, and they started to expand. So that's literally what I'm doing. Just call me Bumblebee.
I would love to see you in a Bumblebee outfit.
So go ahead, Isaac.
No, I was going to ask, what are you doing with these ministries? I mean, I've known you much as mostly as a technical kind of guy, but you're of course also a producer. You're a host. What is it that you're doing with these networks?
Well, just consulting. I mean, I'm working with Hank and Brenda Kuhneman out of Omaha. They're building their own network. They're building new studios and different things. I don't know if you guys know Tony Perkins with Family Research Council right now. They're building two studios, one in Baton Rouge, one in D.C., and I'm helping produce their show and bring it up to another level. I'm working with multiple churches. I'm probably right now consulting on 4 different studios in different churches in different cities, because churches realized after COVID, guys, that if you can't do a decent program stream, if you can't do a decent stream of your service, you are absolutely irrelevant. And to be honest, COVID caused my business and our company, my son and myself with Brandon, our business exploded after COVID because, some of these poor churches got caught behind the 8 ball technically, and I saw one pastor doing a Sunday service, and it looked like an Osama bin Laden cave video. And so, they realized that for their congregation to be connected, they had to up their game technically. So I'm doing any and all of that.
And in doing that also, though, what are you seeing as far as churches and ministries, since you're dealing with so many, changing and progressing, not just technically, but are you seeing some of the old die off and the old ways and that used to be from TBN days and changing in their theory and theology as well as in what they're doing?
Well, without question. I mean, the message of the gospel does not change, but the manner at which we produce it and present it absolutely must change. And what's interesting is when TBN started in 73, I was literally, a 13-year-old kid. There were some cities like, Tulsa and Oklahoma and some of the smaller cities that we were on TV stations. And many of you guys remember TV stations. The millennials don't even know what a TV station is. They're used to watching, TV on this. But, in some of these cities, TBN was like only the 4th or 5th channel in that market. You had ABC, CBS, NBC. Eventually, you were going to flip by TBN, whether you liked it or not. But, from 73 now to 2022, or almost 23, so almost 50 years later, there are now thousands of channels, thousands of ways to watch content. Not only, in my day, you had to be in the living room at a set time, and you had to turn on the TV to watch Gunsmoke or to watch, Batman, and it was my favorite show. But now the millennials and these newer kids, they want to watch what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, where they want to watch it. And so, that's what's changed dramatically. But now churches have become, literally a needle in a haystack sometimes to get people to watch what you're producing.
And that, would you not say that I guess I could say there's a bit of a downside to that, because from a financial standpoint, for instance, when TBN was coming up, I mean, they were pretty much the only Christian network around, and then a couple more came out, but there was very little. Now that there's so many options, wouldn't you think that financial pie is just cut into such small slices that it could be difficult to maintain good production quality? Yes, it's a two-edged sword. I mean, Isaac, to do even what you're doing here 20 years ago would have cost you $500,000 in cameras and equipment. Now you can do it for a few $1,000s. Yep.
That's a good and a bad thing. It brings more people, certainly to the table to produce and do things. But quality is still, to me, something that I am an absolute nut about when I get in meetings with these churches. Camera quality, lens quality, lighting quality. So many people just want to shove a camera or a phone in their face and think the world's going to get saved watching their mug, and that's just not the case. The other thing that has to be involved in any production or movie or anything, it has to be inspired by the Holy Spirit. If we don't have an anointing on our content, on our messages, on our interviews that we do, then it's all for naught. And that's, I think, what TBN brought to the table is they brought a new generation. They got to glimpse and see the anointing and what the Holy Spirit does when it falls on a people, when it falls on an interview, when it falls on a pastor or a preacher in the pulpit. And I think a lot of that has gotten lost because now we're after the rock star pastor with the coolest lights and the best social program and the softball team and the golf clubs. And I just, that I think is going to eventually fall away. And, and that's what disturbs me a little bit with everybody getting in the game because they can now afford it. It's watered the message down in some cases.
I so agree. I agree that it has. You and Brenda do a talk show, right? Your wife, Brenda, for those of you who don't know, Brenda Crouch, she's doing her own show as well. And she's on CNN, CBN, excuse me, CBN, not CNN, which we're real proud of. She's been on other outlets. So you guys, in fact, have two shows, right?
Yeah, we're doing a 30-minute show called Breakpoint. That's kind of a studio-based talk show with, Josh McDowell and, different pastors, different speakers, different people like that. And then she does one called Inside Voice that focuses more on her wheelhouse, which is dealing with abuse. She's a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. She deals with different organizations for addiction and speaks at different conferences on addiction and abuse. So that's kind of her wheelhouse. But yeah, she and I did a video the other day on her channel on Inside Voice. And I finally kind of opened up a little bit. I left TBN 10 years ago. And I just, finally the Lord released me to start telling the truth. And everybody says, oh, their video went viral or this or that went viral. This is really the first video I can truly say that went viral. Like you said, it was on CBN's website, and it had hit 80,000 views when TBN contacted them and asked that it be removed. CBN graciously did. They didn't want to get in the middle of it. I talked to Gordon, and he was very kind about it, Gordon Robertson. Mm-hmm. But when it went down off that site, it's like trying to nail jelly to the wall. You can't do it. Once it popped down off of that website, all of a sudden Brenda's website exploded, and it's hit 60, 70,000 views now on her website. So wow. It's a little bit of, of truth telling. Finally, the main question I always got asked as I was working for different ministries, why did you leave TBN? And for years, I really couldn't open up and talk about it because of various lawsuits and different things. My daughter was involved in a lawsuit, actually both daughters. But now a lot of that has been settled, and I'm finally opening up and letting people know, why I left and getting a glimpse behind the curtain a little bit. And it's been well received. 90% of the people thank me for it. 10% of the people, think I'm going to hell for doing what I did. But, it is what it
really?
is.
And you don't care about those 10%, really, do
No.
I mean,
my dad had a great saying. We were talking on the air one time, and he goes, I'm convinced, as he was doing Christian television, or we were doing Christian television, he said, a third of the people love you, a third of the people hate you, and a third of the people don't care one way or the other. So I'm kind of learning that same thing.
Well, in doing that show, though, and coming out, and Isaac and I both witnessed a lot of what went on. So we both know the things that you were telling about, which personally, I'm so grateful that you've finally done this. And, because, again, so many people didn't, all of a sudden you were just off the map and your picture's off TBN and there's no photos and it's like you disappeared from TBN and people wonder, well, what happened? And, I think and you really went there. I mean, you really talked about some things that I think some people only read about or, articles were written, but you kind of did it again, though, in the hopes of restoration. I don't think you did it in a mean way. I think there was a purpose in the way you did it.
No. And the bottom line of all of it was, God will use flawed people. I mean, I've worked with every, icon of our faith almost in this last 20, 30 years. Listen, they're all flawed. I'm flawed. You guys are flawed. My parents were very flawed. But, in all honesty, my brother saw an opportunity, and he listen, some seek power. That is if that's a flaw or, I don't know, but he was absolutely seeking power and to get control of TBN. And I had to go. I was in his way. So that is an absolute fact, and the situation will bear it out. And to be honest with you guys, what I even talked about on Brenda's thing was the tip of the iceberg. I mean, yes. I'm going to do a part 2, and some of this stuff you're going to want to unhear or not, wish your eyes could unsee, because it's crazy. Sometimes fact is stranger than fiction. But I want people to know that God will use, us anyway in our flaws. And despite Matt's wranglings to try to get me out, God has really put me on another platform, and I'm doing other things. And I really never missed a beat. But, I want people to know the truth, though, of what took place, and the fact that there is such a thing as victim shaming. And
Yes.
I got caught in a situation
Yes.
where I had to literally take a bullet for either my daughter or take a bullet for my parents. And it was Sophie's choice, absolutely Sophie's choice.
It was.
And I decided to take a bullet for my daughter. Matt took advantage of that, and the rest is history.
Are you going to do it in a book form as well, or are you just going to do these shows?
I have been offered 6 figures 2 times to do a book, and I've turned it down every time. Again, the Lord's leading me a step at a time. Brenda's been helping me through that. There will be a book at some point, and I'm talking with a company right now, some of the same guys that helped do Trump 2024, in doing a documentary. And it's going to be kind of scary once it all comes out. It won't be a dull moment, I'll tell you that.
Your career path may change again.
Well, Paul, I was there. I was at TBN. I was volunteering like in 1977, 78. So I've been there a long time. I've gone through a lot of what you talked about. I was there. And I know that there's so much more, but if there's one thing, I worked very closely with, of course, your mom for about a good 4 or 5 years or so. And yes, they're definitely flawed people. I experienced it. But if there's one thing I was able to notice, especially when I started to work that close to her, was that she definitely had a love for people and wanted people to get saved.
Yes.
So when people hear these things, I just want to make sure that they don't then say, that means that it was all a lie. That means that I don't want anything to do with God anymore, because this wasn't God. This was people and their own personalities. And I've always felt, by the way, that sometimes God tends to use flawed people even more, because if there's one thing that he does see in them is obedience. And your parents were very obedient.
No, that's very true. And, all you have to do is look in the Bible with, Peter. He was a liar. He was a stinking liar. And what did Christ say? On this rock, I'm going to build my church. Look at Moses, how flawed he was. And, and you're right. My mom was, I don't want to say bipolar, but she may have been bipolar, because she could know Isaac, as you know, the sweetest, kindest, loving. She was a great mom.
Yes.
We used to laugh and cut up and tell jokes. And then if you crossed her, she would take your head off. And I got caught in, that caught between a rock and a hard place between both my parents. And honestly, when I left in 2012 or whatever it was, there was honestly a bit of relief. I left kind of going, oh my gosh, I can breathe again, because there was so much tension. Matt was involved. These lawsuits were flying back and forth. And it was not fun. It was not fun at all. And I don't think people realize, when they see a great ministry or a pastor or a great leader, I don't think many people realize the sacrifice that these people go through to get where they are. I saw my mom literally weep, almost like drops of blood. She was weeping and praying so hard for the ministry, for my dad, for us kids, for TBN as a whole. And to whom much is given, trust me, much is required.
And it does affect the children too. And look at the fallout with you and Matt. I would love to know what your parents would think these days of what's going on, because I just know that they wouldn't have stood for that, of what's happening, what's happened at TBN. They wouldn't have. They've been grieved.
Yeah.
No, my dad especially, and that's what happened is, I said in my story that when I left, my dad called me a few days later and he said, PJ, this is terrible. I feel horrible. This is not right. He said, let's let this settle or set for 6 months, 3 months, 6 months. Let everything kind of blow over. And he said, we'll bring you back and we'll kind of move on down the road with what he wanted. My dad has, and that's going to come out in part 2 of this series. I have a picture of my brother and my mother holding my dad's last will and testament. And you will be shocked at kind of what I'm going to show you. But that was manipulated, that was changed, that was never presented to me. And TBN's attorneys stonewalled me on all fronts with that last will and testament, or my dad's last wishes. It's a document that he hand wrote, with his in longhand. He did personally. And so we'll see. I mean, I know he would be grieved, but after I left, after that 3, 4, 5, 6 months, his health truly broke, and he died within about another 3 to 6 months. And he just had no strength, no control. And once Dad died, it was over at that point.
And the same thing, ironically, kind of happened to your mother, where she didn't even realize what was being done to her and what Matt did to her. I won't give away too much. I'm just saying, though, it repeated itself to her.
Yeah. And she was still on the board, but by then she had lost majority control of the board. Mm-hmm. And, the lawsuits were still flying back and forth with Kara. My daughter's lawsuit, TBN drug that out for almost 8 years. And you know what it costs to drag a lawsuit out and to appeal a judgment for 8 years. TBN spent tens of millions of dollars trying to, go after my daughter. And that's the painful part is, you go into protect mode, that if somebody's shooting at your daughter,
sure,
you do everything you can to protect them or to want to protect them. And that's kind of what happened. And, and the pain is still there. But listen, I love my brother. I love TBN. I love my folks. I have forgiven everybody. But that does not negate that people, I think, need to know the truth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'll be honest with you, and I think I told you this a few years ago, that your mom is your mom is most likely the reason that I am where I am today, because she did open a lot of doors for me. Sometimes she literally would call me and just, I'm going to fire you. And then 10 minutes later, honey. And that's just, I remember one time that happened to me.
A smiley face.
Yeah, little smiley faces. And I remember one time, I was down in the studio with Paul, in fact, with you, PJ, and she called for me and I wasn't in the office. So I went upstairs and she just ripped into me. And then I went back down to tell you that. And you said, look, in 10 minutes, it'll probably be a whole different story. And sure enough, it was. But I am in deep gratitude to both your parents, really, for opening up this opportunity. I mean, I was a 19-year-old teenager, and they allowed for me to come in there and grab my hand, put my hands on a camera, and eventually get hired. And then, again, your mom just really opened up some great doors for me. So I'm eternally grateful. Eternally grateful to her. So, again, I just want people to know that there's definitely some good that came out of everything that Paul and Jen did.
Without question. In fact, guys, I still, to this day, Brenda and I were walking out of a movie or something, and this not to be racist, this Mexican guy comes walking towards me, and he's bald, and he's got like a Satan tattoo on his bald head and these neck tattoos. And I mean, he starts walking towards me, and Brenda and I are like, are we going to run or what?
Hey.
And this guy comes up to me and he has tears.
Oh.
Tears in his eyes.
Oh.
And he said, Paul Jr., he said, I was in prison in Scottsdale or in Phoenix, Arizona. And he said, all I did was watch TBN every day.
Wow.
He said I got wonderfully saved, and the tattoos were still there, but he had the kindest, sweetest heart, and he hugged me. He brought his wife over. He had 2 or 3 of the cutest little kids, and I was just going, maybe it was worth it. It is worth it to see the fruit people's lives that were changed. And so I will never forget that as long as I live. But, there are thousands of stories like that I will probably never hear, but it's all good.
Yeah,
and it's from the days of what your parents did, and from the days, I mean, I'm not disparaging TBN now, but I'm saying it was the fruit that was sown by your parents. And that's what I want, what's important is what the seed that they planted, like you said. And it'll be exciting. Let's direct people to where they can see that show with you and Brenda and Isaac, right? And where they can see the next one that's coming up. So they'll keep following Brenda's show.
Yeah, where can they go?
The best place to go is just Brenda's website, and it's just brendacrouch.com, Crouch. And she's got all kinds of, different teachings and different things, but her podcast thing is called Inside Voice. And because it's gotten the most views, it'll probably be popped right at the beginning. Or you can just go onto YouTube and just Google Paul Crouch, Brenda Crouch. And right now, because it's trending so hard, it'll pop right up. And if you want a little glimpse into, Christian television, into my parents, both good and bad, but the bottom line and the redemptive element, as you both know, is God will use flawed people. And thank the Lord he does, because otherwise, all three of us would have nothing to do.
And if there's a ministry or someone out there that wants you to take a look at their church or their building or what they're doing in production, at PJ Video, they can get in touch with you in a different way, right?
Yeah. This is the office for PJ Video behind me. We're getting ready for a big men's conference with John Randall at the Anaheim Convention Center. But pjvideo.com, and we've got contact information there. You can email us or whatever. But that's really what I'm doing, is production, directing, producing, and helping churches, really trying to pull them up and raise the level of the ocean a little bit in church production. Because guys, pastors, if you're not doing a good, decent stream, trust me, you will become irrelevant. You must evolve with the technology. And half of the churches I'm working with are building their own TV studios so that they can do other productions. Mariners Church right down the street, you guys both know that church. They're doing kids programming. They're doing youth programming. They're doing stuff to give their congregation and kids alternative things to watch.
Wow.
And they're doing a great job.
That's fantastic. Well, Paul, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today. If you're ever down here in the Houston area, let's connect. Let's get together. Maybe we can share some more stories, all right?
Yeah, I've got one or two.
So good to have you on, Paul. So good to have all three of us together again. I like that, too.
It was terrific.
Bless you guys.
Folks, don't forget, if you want to write us at faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. That's faithonfilmtv@gmail.com. And you can always follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at faithonfilmtv. Holly, we've done another one.
We did. This is a great show. I loved it. Old friends together. And I love that Paul's going to have even more of the story come out. We'll have to watch for more.
Amen. Good to see you, Paul.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll see you next week.